So the reason why we are holding this Leaders Roundtable on this specific topic is that whenever we talk about regional cooperation, we only talk about, we think the first thing that comes to our mind is cross-border trade, electricity trade, which is of course very, very pertinent for regional cooperation. But there are many areas for regional cooperation which can also be taken up, which do not really need to even have political consensus, so to say. It could be just market-driven, industry-driven, so to say. When you say clean energy value chain, you could talk about transmission equipments, distribution equipments, energy-efficient appliances. So there are electric mobility, electric buses, cars, charging infrastructure. So there are a lot of emerging areas, battery storage, in the clean energy transition space, which still have not been tapped as far as the regional cooperation is concerned. So ladies and gentlemen, with that again I extend a warm welcome, and I would invite our Mission Director, USAID India and Bhutan, Steve Olive, to give his opening remarks.
Thank you, Apurva, and good afternoon, everyone. As Apurva was saying, it's really an honor and a pleasure to have this smaller session with all of you and an interaction throughout, not only in this session, but throughout the next couple of days. And so after a successful inauguration of SACEF 2024, I am delighted to welcome all of you to another important and powered-packed session, Leaders Roundtable on Expanding Regional Cooperation Across Clean Energy Value Chain. I'd hate to see the acronym for that, but it's really a pleasure to be amidst stalwarts such as yourselves. Each of you are a leader in your own right, and I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the critical importance of expanding regional cooperation in the clean energy value chain. We've already made significant strides in cross-border energy, and we have the opportunity to go even further to address the challenges that transcend borders and seize opportunities that can reshape the future. For decades, USAID has been a committed partner to supporting cross-border energy trade across South Asia. The benefits are well known: reduced electricity costs, lower carbon footprint, and critically, strengthened regional ties. The innovation we've seen, whether in technologies, business models, or regulatory frameworks, has had an impact on stretches beyond individual countries. Sharing these successes has reduced learning curves and accelerated progress. We hope to take our conversation to the next frontier, beyond interconnecting grids and cross-border energy trade, towards a broader, more integrated approach to clean energy cooperation. South Asia is not only one of the most populous regions, but is also one of the most climate vulnerable. The challenge here, whether related to air quality, energy infrastructure, or environmental resilience, demand a united cross-border response. This roundtable is essential to catalyzing that response. Expanding regional cooperation to new areas like sustainable transportation, grid equipment, and energy-efficient appliances holds immense potential. By investing in these sectors, the region can drive economic growth, environmental outcomes, and create a wealth of new jobs. To know the know-how created in one country in the form of model documents, frameworks, contracts, tools, business models, pilots and demonstrations, specifications, etc., can be shared, thereby reducing the learning curve and accelerating the pace of execution. South Asia still relies heavily on fossil fuel imports, which continues to strain economies across the region. Enhancing local manufacturing capacity for clean energy technologies, everything from solar panels to energy-efficient appliances, would not only reduce import dependence, but also unlock new value chains in South Asia. This effort will require strong collaboration between governments and the private sector, moving beyond energy trade to creating robust, regionally integrated supply chains. USAID, through our initiatives like the Southeast Asia Regional Energy Partnership, is already supporting this vision. SACEF is helping to unlock the vast clean energy potential of 6 countries across the region, and we are committed to deepening these efforts as we move forward. But it's clear that further progress will depend on coordinated actions of all of us. I hope that the leaders will reflect on opportunities such as these. The session today will identify and create avenues for extending regional cooperation across the clean energy value chain in South Asia. I'm looking forward to the discussions and emerging actions items today. On our part, we are committed to working with all of you to ensure this dialogue continues and evolves into concrete action. Before I conclude, I want to thank each of you again for your time, your contributions, your leadership, and your commitment. This is not just a conversation, this is the beginning of a new chapter in South Asia's clean energy journey. Together, we can shape the future with sustainable energy that drives economic growth, regional stability, and a healthier planet. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve, for setting this opening remarks and setting the stage, so to say, for the discussions forward. With that, may I now request Anish Ray, a senior key member of the USAID SAREF program and a long-standing partner of USAID. Anish, if you could just set the context presentation.
Thank you, Apurva. It's indeed a pleasure. Good afternoon, everyone, to be in front of you. Just to set out the context for what Mission Director has already mentioned about. This is a closed-door session, so we can be open and try to open up some new pathways of collaboration and cooperation between, beyond cross-border energy trade. I'm just going to lay out the context of that. Some of it you have heard since the morning. 1/4 of humanity resides over here. Yet, there are challenges over here in terms of economic development, providing jobs to the millennials who are a very large part of our population over here. There's some big advantages in terms of growing disposable incomes, mobile literacy, people using technological tools for their everyday work. So we need to tap into those and make sure that we are able to get to the potential which we have, which is improving. As you see in the top box over there, South Asia will account for 7% of global GDP by 2030, up from 4% by 2023. So it's a very fast pace of growth. And correspondingly, the energy demand will also increase. But there are challenges. Energy security, as Mission Director mentioned, is a big challenge, and it's 2/3 of energy requirements are imported in the region. And that accounts for 1/3 of the energy bills of the overall import bills of the countries, put together. And that's a massive drain. So we have to find, and this is just the energy imports. If you take appliance imports, equipment imports, it becomes a much larger share. So if you look at the disproportionate impact, and if I can call it negative impact, which the imports have on the economies, it's something to be dealt with. Much of this is from fossil fuel. 80% of energy production is from fossil fuels. And given that all the countries have net zero targets, more or less, everybody has net zero targets, 5 out of 6 economies have that, it is something which will be a great challenge, but also a great opportunity. We are climate affected. Again, it's been talked about since yesterday quite a bit, so not getting there. We also will have increasing energy requirements. Today, we are about 38% of global per capita average in energy consumption, and this is going to grow very quickly as all the nations in this region go forward. If we don't address the clean energy transition, there is also loss of economic output. 4 to 7% of GDP today is lost because of power outages, and we are talking of actually growing and transitioning at the same time. So given all of these things, given the imperatives which we have, and that last box at the bottom is the biggest imperative, 1.2 million jobs need to be created per month in this region. Given if we don't address those, then we will have a serious social challenge. Conversely, if we address those, it can become a great opportunity, and this is where the region needs to come together. I'm not going to spend so much of time on the left-hand side because those are what you know about the NDCs which the countries have made, but I'm going to focus a little bit on the right-hand side about what are the asks of all of this. If we have to really make the clean energy transition and have a lot of the economic value to reside within the region, within the countries, then what is that we need? We need smart grid infrastructure upgrades, or various kinds of infrastructure upgrades, storage upgrades, energy efficiency to go up very, very quickly. We need renewable energy integration, flexibility. We need smart distribution, power distribution. We need alternate fuels, and eventually we all need to go towards a hydrogen economy, which is being talked across the world. So this is what we are going to need to happen within the region. And for that, we need to have a lot of demand side actions, including improving our industrial efficiency, industrial decarbonization happening, residential energy efficiency, getting manufacturing up, which is mostly the discussion today, also getting our markets in place, environmental markets, carbon markets. Our built environment, and we have been talking about the cooling programs, our built environment needs to transform. And finally, this is an agrarian society. Large parts of South Asia is agrarian, so we need agricultural modernization. Look at it, all of it presents, as I mentioned, great challenges, but there are also great opportunities. The question is that how do we tap into that? And that's where regional cooperation play a big role. That red box which you see is the message to take away from this whole slide. Regional cooperation in general has been weak in this. Interregional trade share, if you see Europe and Central Asia, is at 70% plus. We are just at 7%. So there has to be sustained efforts for making that happen, going beyond cross-border electricity trade into wider, investments in products, solutions which have to, and extending in general to newer areas. Including in energy, which, as I mentioned at the beginning itself, is the biggest draw on our resources. So what kind of areas for energy cooperation? Grid and distribution equipment, clearly, which is going to become wider and wider. Can we do something about that? Low carbon transport, can we scale those up using regional resources, maybe combining capabilities here? Energy efficiency, big area, renewable energy and storage. All of those come together, and the benefits are many. It's almost like self-evident benefits. Just to talk about the scale of that opportunity a little more, 252 million smart meters to be deployed. So there are people in this room who are from that industry. Can we do something more to make sure that the value for that stays within the region? Countries collaborate to make sure that we are capturing that within the region. Similarly, the e-bus program, which has just started and is accelerating quite quickly, about 14 billion by 2030. The cooling market is massive, 126 billion by 2050 and 28 billion by 2030. So those are great opportunities, high efficiency cooling, which we were talking about in the morning. Similarly, for green buildings, the solar capacity in the region will go up 4.5x by 2040 approximate time frame. Similar for storage, which will require large-scale investments. And overall, the financing, the level of financing which will be required, will exceed 200 billion. Now, when you have that financing, we have a choice. We can actually have that financing and let that money go outside the countries and the regions, not benefiting, and be a trading economy or trading economies, but not benefiting our people, not creating the employment and the jobs, high quality jobs which we need. Or we can do something to change that and have the economic value added in the region, in the countries individually, and then pull it together to make sure that the mass of humanity, 1/4 of humanity which resides over here, the young population, the millennials who are there, who are a big part of our population, and in the next 15, 20 years, these will be young economies where jobs have to be created. We create the jobs for them. So this is where we have framed something for the discussion today. As you see, there are no people over here to talk about it. So all of us are going to talk about and ideate in this room as peers. We're going to talk about the scope of regional cooperation, which at the core of it, there are 3 goals: economic growth, environmental sustainability, and employment creation. This is what we think should be the 3 overarching goals for the region to come together and collaborate. And how would that collaboration happen? We need to talk about investments, we need to talk about innovation, we need to talk about infrastructure, we need to talk about institutions, and we need to talk about the instruments which will make all of this possible. So this is the broad framework, and 3 questions to start with. These are not binding questions. The conversation should take us to more questions as they emerge. But 3 questions which we would want to start with. We'll start with the countries and go into the priority segments for those countries, perhaps all, but some more than others, and see how are we engaging with the market. Okay, so that's the first point which we'll go to. And then in that context, bring that to regional cooperation. If that is how we are engaging with the market, can regional cooperation add something to that? The second thing is that what are the most logical segments to start? We can start everywhere because there would be, I've painted the picture for 5 segments, but you could have many, many more appliances, lighting, all of that, okay? What are the most logical places to start for investments? Because investments need to happen in the region for the value addition to be happening in the region. And who could be the investors? Now, we have choices. We have equipment manufacturers over here. We have private equities which are keen, but they don't see the region as a whole. We have entrepreneurs, including startups, who are keen to expand their footprint. We have financial institutions, development financial institutions, including the private sector arms of those institutions. So those could be there. And finally, towards the end, bring together what could be some of the foundational actions which will take us, which will show us the pathway to make that happen. So these are the 3 broad questions. Again, broad guidance, not straitjacketed, but we need to talk about those. We will start with the countries, but we will want to go to the private sector and hear their voice very quickly, because those are the people who are going to make the investments happen. So we're going to start this. I'm going to start with Manu Srivastava from Madhya Pradesh government, who has to leave in some time for a flight. So maybe we can get the mics over there and then start about it. More starting, Manu, from the first question. And of course, you and I have spoken on various other occasions on these things, but we would want to hear your views. One other thing is that when we are hosting this, I will be joined by Tanmay Tathagat. His colorful shirt you cannot miss. I'm a regular corporate guy, but Tanmay has deep experience in working in many of these sectors directly. So it's invaluable to have his presence over here and co-moderating this along with me.
Anish, I would just use the opportunity to talk about very briefly about 3 projects that we are doing, and also explaining a little bit about the philosophy of each project. So the first project, one of the projects that we are doing is a solar plus a storage project, which is actually a mix of 2 projects. So in India, we have had solar plus a storage projects, or we have had storage as a service. Now this project is really a mix of both. So there is a solar project, 600 megawatt, and there is a battery, 880 megawatt hour battery. So the solar is supposed to charge the battery for giving us the evening peak. And once the battery is discharged, Then it turns into the storage as a service product, and the battery is available, and the utility provides free input so that the developer can give morning peak. And we give the same tariff for the morning peak, for the real-time solar that is available apart from having charged for the evening peak and the evening peak. So really from the beginning of the morning peak to the end of the evening peak, we seek a common tariff. So the developer gets some sort of a premium for the real-time solar, because the cost I expect would be higher, and they give us a discount during the morning peak and the evening peak. So the interesting point about this tender is that we are concurrently running two thermal tenders. So the idea being that if the tariff of the, we can compare the tariff of the thermal tender and of the solar plus storage tender, because this is essentially also giving us some sort of stable power from around 6 a.m. in the morning to around 10:30, 11 in the night. So that's a substantial part of the day. So if we are anywhere close to it, there is a fundamental question that whether we should go ahead with the thermal or not. And so this is because of my, you can say, bias in favor of renewable energy, I am trying to offload some of the burden of the cost from the solar plus storage project. So for example, costs of transmission, etc., that the state is bearing. So that is not borne by the developer or the project. So we are wanting to lighten up this. That is one project that is new. So we have issued the RFP for the project. The PPA, I suppose we should be issuing by the next week. It is it's a 600 megawatt solar plus 880 megawatt hour battery project. Another project that we are doing is a shared project with UP. Essentially, the philosophy behind it is that large number of states have a variation in the consumption pattern across the year, especially states which have an agricultural base and their agricultural demand is funny and strange. For example, in Madhya Pradesh, all the irrigation is in the Rabi months. So does Rajasthan actually. So our demand peaks from October to February, March. UP on the other hand has high demand from April to September. So we are constrained from procuring more solar because we know what to do with solar during Q3, Q4, but don't know what to do with the solar during Q1 and Q2. UP has the same problem, but they know what to do with the solar during Q1 and Q2. They don't know what to do with solar in Q3 and Q4. So that has traditionally prevented both UP and MP from procuring more solar. So we have got together. I reached out to UP a few months back, and we have agreed that we would have a 2000 megawatt project to begin with in Madhya Pradesh, injecting into ISTS, and UP would sign a PPA for the next 25 years for Q1 and Q2, and MP would sign a PPA for the next 25 years for Q3 and Q4. And this actually finds a place. CA has recently conducted a resource adequacy report, so it finds a mention there. So we have actually identified a pipeline of 9,500 megawatt projects that we intend to set up like this. So this would increase the solar ambition of both UP and MP. And there is one last project that I would like to talk about, which again talks about the philosophy. In my view, the initial challenge that renewable energy faced was the one of pricing, that it was too expensive. So I believe with effort of government and initiative of all of us and other friends like that we have crossed that barrier. And now, and as I said earlier, solar today is half the price of a new coal-based power from a new coal-based power project. However, there are still issues that need to be addressed because I am looking after both energy and renewable energy sector. There is a lot of resistance still in the conservative, in the traditional energy sector to greater adoption of renewable energy. So I believe now we should start addressing those problems, that what are the concerns that conventional energy system has to greater use of renewable energy. So my answer to that is that we should start solving the problems of the energy sector. We should not just be seen as a target that needs to be accomplished, because anyway it makes sense now economically. But there are other cost issues that are there that need to be solved. So we are trying to use I mean, most of you would know the Kusum A and Kusum C schemes. It's a substantial meaty injection at the distribution level. So we are doing, making two innovations there, and I will talk about very briefly about them. One is we are making it a point, compulsory that all injection would be on the LV side of the 33 by 11 substation. The idea would be that that would effectively virtually increase the capacity of the substation. If the injection were to be upstream, then the transformer is immune to what is flowing through it. It is thermal or solar or nuclear. But if you inject it at the LV side, you are effectively increasing the capacity of the substation without investing on it. So if it's a 5 MVA substation, and if you are injecting say 5 megawatt on the LV side, effectively the capacity of the substation becomes 10 megawatt during solar hours without having invested anything at all. And otherwise the upgradation would cost almost 1 crore. So you are saving 1 crore of capital investment with DISCOM by simply making the point of injection from the HV side to the LV side. Now we are doing in all the overloaded transformers of the state, as also those transformers which are at the fag end of a long 33 kV line. So there is a substantial voltage drop on account of that. So we are injecting even there so that the voltage loss can be managed. And the other thing that we are doing is reactive load management. As we know that in rural and semi-urban areas, there is substantial problem of reactive load, which is distributed in nature. Now, how do we try to address it? By having capacitor banks, which involves a capital expenditure, and DISCOMs are unable to either make it or more seriously to manage them. Reactive power problems have been handled fairly well at the power grid level and at the state transmission levels, but not at the distribution level. And most of the challenge of reactive load is at the distribution level. So the challenge is distributed in nature. So now there is a lot of RE generation happening at the distribution sector, but traditionally the injection of solar energy has been at unity power factor. So we are not using the reactive power solution that the inverters can provide because of our adherence to unity power factor injection. So we are encouraging our RE generators to supply reactive power to manage the reactive load, and we are compensating them for reactive power along with active power. So they are being compensated for both active power and reactive power. So this would help in managing the voltage at the distribution end level without making the capital expenditure that is required in capacitor banks. So by these innovations, we are trying to make sure that renewable energy addresses the challenges and problems that the power sector faces. And I believe this is the direction we should be moving. So these are the projects that we're working on.
Thank you for that elaborate thing. I just have a couple of follow-on questions in line with the theme of our session. And the theme of our session, as you know, is going beyond cross-border energy trade into regional cooperation on some of the other areas, including manufacturing, solutions, capability exchanges, and so on. Given the rich experience which is now developing in areas like you combining solar and storage, capacitors, reactive compensation, is there something which you see which can be then used more broadly regionally? Very quickly, I know you have to leave.
I would say that I believe that power exchange within countries has its own challenges, and I think it's beyond the competence of all of us.
That's also not what we are discussing. We are going beyond.
But there are so many things, especially the decentralized power. It is something that it's more, I think, knowledge sharing. So we have learned so much. And I must say that the first project I talked about, the solar plus storage, the genesis of that thought really came from interaction we had with Berkeley University, which convinced us that battery works the best with 2 cycles of charging and discharging. So there is a lot of learning that can happen. Similarly, on reactive power, there is a learning that I did some electrical engineering along with my friend Sandeep many years back, but I didn't think we took our classes that seriously. So a lot of learning that I personally have made in the last few months. So there is a lot to learn from each other, and there are easy solutions that can be provided. But
yeah, thank you. I just want to go on now to those 3 things which I pointed out to go in, and I'll hand it over to Tanmay. But broadly within those sectors, I think we would want to go into equipment and equipment manufacturing, creating the manufacturing ecosystems and supply chains, to solutions, because they have to be integrated into solutions just like you mentioned, and the capability aspects, how we can use them as accelerators in the region. So Tanmay, maybe you can take over and we can go around in no particular order, go around the room, focusing on some of those strategic aspects. Perspective. So yeah, so why don't we hand over the mic to you over here and
yeah, maybe I'll start and then I'll give my colleagues to also add. I think regional cooperation is in the energy sector value chain is very crucial. I think we heard that yesterday, whole day, this morning, whole morning we heard that. And that is actually to achieve our energy security, the affordability aspects in this particular region, and of course the sustainability. And in case of Bhutan, we are already a renewable energy base. The challenge we face is the winter and summer deficiencies, the typical winter shortages, and we have a surplus summer. So that's a typical situation that we are in. And in terms of segments, I think we are now looking at diversifying the renewable energy sector itself. So we are looking at diversifying in the solar, the wind, and others like hydrogen and all technologies. So what in terms of how we are engaging the market, the hydropower sector used to be a close kind of a sector, and we have never allowed any private sector participation in the hydro. But now recently we have actually come up with a policy that we will allow private sector in the hydropower up to our minimum shareholding. And in the case of solar and other technologies, we allow 100%. And as long as, in terms of who will actually, how will this, what type of investor will come in, I think as long as we see the visibility of funds, I think we really don't have preference. And the catch point will be that we need to be affordable in terms of electricity pricing at the end, I think the energy pricing. So these are some of the things. And then in terms of, I think the actionable, I think for us, maybe we can look at the regional energy market. We don't have that. Maybe developing regional energy market, and then how we actually enable the cross-border electricity trade in a seamless manner. Maybe we look at joint energy storage initiatives like pump storage and battery. Of course, then we also have to look at the great interconnectivity between the in the region. Then, of course, things like how do we access to the finance and the technology. So these are some of the things that just comes to our mind. Maybe my colleagues can add few if they have.
I think one of the main ideas was the imperatives that you see from Bhutan's perspective for economic growth, employment generation, and of course environmental sustainability. So is the regional market, is the regional discussion go beyond just the electricity or energy trade to look at some other ideas that bring together those common themes that are important for everyone in the region?
we have a mic?
Yes, just to add on what our secretary mentioned, I suppose your final question was what are the end impacts. I suppose that should come naturally if you can resolve the problem at hand, which appears to be at the present time the discussions on the clean energy forum as to how we are going to share the resources that we have in a more effective and efficient manner. Just to add on what my secretary mentioned, I think to add on what our friend from Madhya Pradesh, the additional chief secretary mentioned, it's a good thing to see that there is state-to-state discussions that are going on in terms of how the allocation of solar power is taking place, because the requirement is in different seasons and different months based on agriculture mostly in this case. But if you look at the regional level, if you look at a country-specific issue like what we face in Bhutan, we're investing quite substantially into hydro. The expectation would be that we work very closely with countries which are investing in wind and solar, and that we find a complementariness where we work together. And during the time when we cannot produce hydro, we get the solar injected into Bhutan. But when we have hydro, we are giving hydro back. And the way the seasonality works, India needs most of the power, and Bangladesh needs most of the power, most probably Sri Lanka also, during the summer months only, and we need the power during the winter months. So I think there needs to be maybe a closer interaction between the countries as far as what investments are taking place into what energy resources in different areas, and see how we can share those resources.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just, nudge again the Bhutan table? Being highly import dependent country in terms of your equipments and appliances, beyond of course where you lead, hydroelectric power, if you could, talk about what are the problems that you have in terms of having good quality products, things like that, and where the regional cooperation could help in terms of harmonizing the standards, making them available to Bhutan at a lower price, better quality. Karma, you've been champion in this, so if I could just nudge you to do that.
I'm not sure if I'm a champion in that, but definitely we did discuss yesterday where ESSL CEO himself painted the larger sort of a picture. When you look at the staggering numbers that we have just witnessed yesterday in terms of the market aggregation and economies of the scale that India is able to sort of leverage on, we are in the peripheries in terms of having to depend on some of these equipments, appliances, so to speak. And yes, we talk about the market transformation in terms of the standards and labeling the appliances. But at the end of the day, what really matters is building in the confidence in the consumers. And yes, for some reason, we talk about the economies of scale, and then, essentially the price sort of signaling in terms of the affordability, but then what we sort of fizzle out at after some point of time, because everything has a life, would mean, a simple example I always draw the attention is that, for instance, the LED lamps. I know the Surya gurus are here, but then what I have noticed, especially in the Philips brand, there was a stage where, it used to cost us not less than 300, 400 sort of rupees for a LED lamp. And then obviously because of the transformation, because of the economies of scale, the prices have, technology, innovation, the prices have come down. But today when you go to any shop, you just ask, I need a Philips LED lamp, and they will ask you what price. My sort of the bottom line here is, so it's not a question of the affordability in many sense. It's the technological choice that you are giving. And I know under the guise of, being a pro-market innovation, that there is often or not that we always tend to leverage on the market concepts, leverage on these innovations, the idea that you can get a 100 rupees sort of LED, the Philips LED lamp, vis-a-vis with similar sort of lumens output appliances at lesser a price. But then what we sort of really don't internalize the idea of building the confidence in consumers is, you buy the 50 rupee one vis-a-vis with the looking at the upfront sort of prices, and then after a few days, if that 50 rupees sort of burns out, where is that sort of the building of the confidence? So the idea of self-regulation vis-a-vis with policing in terms of maintaining these sort of standards, harmonization of standards, everything, I suppose at the end of the day could actually guide to a larger sort of extent. But that's not the sort of a root cause the way I see it. So from our experiences, yes, I did talk about in terms of the statistics. Essentially, we see a growth in the consumer sort of driven appliances, because regardless of the source of the electricity, but at the end of the day, it's the idea of how we are emancipating, the larger sort of the population by way of actually, leveraging on this growth. So in that sense, the root cause here, the way I see it is, on one hand, yes, we all talk about how to make a climate resilience. On the other hand, we talk about how to manage the growing demand. So there is a fine thin line, the balancing that we have to do. So in that sense, the standards and labeling, the appliances, I think at currently, yes, it's not being recognized to a larger sort of mainstream minds, but moving forward, this could also be an integral part in mainstreaming when we discuss about, the energy corporation, be it regional, be it countrywide sort of approach, because in that it has this capacity to integrate not just the employment but also the economic growth, and at the same time the environmental sustainability aspects. So that's how I see in terms of, it's not a sort of a cherry picking in many ways, but it has to be understood in the larger context of how we are actually addressing end to end of the value chain. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that is a very succinct way of summarizing this whole discussion of one thing that could lead this change. For example, a discussion on common standards for certain things like appliances, and starting with a bulb, which is the most fundamental appliance that you talk about. So, Anish.
No, thank you. And we can go. We do have additional member railway board here, and in the context of not generation of electricity, but getting the industry to respond to your requirements, and then extending to a cross-border context, saying that how regionally can come. Your thoughts on that? Yeah.
Hello. Namaskar and good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Jaydeep Gupta, Additional Member, Railway Board and Additional Secretary, Office Access Additional Secretary to Government of India. 2 or 3 quick points first. Indian Railways, as you all know, is the backbone of the Indian economy, and as you all know, India is the GDP of India is growing with leaps and bounds. So, Indian Railway is committed for a net carbon zero emission by 2030. Our requirement is around 12.8 gigawatts by 2030. That will be our requirement, and we are in a very exciting time. Like, we have 2 landmarks in the year 2025, next year. Number one, we will be 100% electrified. Our route kilometer is 65,000 kilometers. Our track kilometer is over 1.5 lakhs track kilometer, and that's going to be fully electrified. That perhaps this is not perhaps, but it is the only railways in the world to have 100% electrification of that magnitude. Switzerland is the other country which is having 100% electrification, but it's so small, it is hardly of half a state, half a district. So Indian Railways by this year end will be having 1.5 lakh kilometers of electrified tracks, and there will not be any diesel engine running for the mainline traction because all will be electrified. And second landmark is Indian Railways, the first electric train started in 3rd of February 1925. So 3rd February next year will be 100 years of electric energy, electric traction coming to India. So these 2 landmarks are great for us. We will be celebrating that, and with these we want a clean energy solution. Right now we have number of PPAs with the thermal power plants, and as their PPAs are closing down, we don't want further renewal of those PPAs. So what's the ultimate solution? One is RERTC, renewable energy around the clock, but it's very limited because our requirement is 12.8 gigawatt. So the battery or some storage device can sustain for some time. And one more thing, our load is, we are the base load. We are the customer, we are having the load 24 hours, almost the same. So, because that's why the industry, the power industry should always look towards railways, because we will be the backbone of the production. All other sectors, all other customers, their load varies. But railway is the only load which is constant. And that's why we can give the base advantage to all the production plants. So what we decide to do, and in fact we are thinking in that direction, nuclear clean energy. People, there has to be a change in mindset. With the advent of new technology, a safer and safer technology, we should go for nuclear energy, which is a clean energy source. With SMRs, small nuclear reactors, micro SMRs, even having say 200 megawatt, 100 megawatts, small modular reactors, that can be, if the economy of scale increases, that can be made in a factory and then it can be transported to a place, passively cooled, safe. Passively cooled means the cooling of the reactor, the cooling of the core should not be with some pumps. It should be with the gravity. Whenever there is a failure of a pump or whenever like a Fukushima case, if the you see a lot of literature in this. Literature is coming up. US is doing like there are a lot of companies in US which are working in the SMRs. In fact, we had a discussion with the Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited, and like Bharat SMR, of course, Bharat SMR is having, which is we are having around 210 megawatt reactors, which are having certain safety, further developed safety mechanism, and that's why the economic zone, the exclusive zone has come to 50 kilometers. So that's again, we are also going for, we are also having, we like to have a tie-up with the Nuclear Power Corporation of India. So that is what we are planning. And number two, about my dream. One more thing, like when I was in a say western sector, so what I find, like in somewhere in Jaisalmer or somewhere, you find daylight. But that time, if I speak to some of my friend in the Northeast Frontier Railway, maybe somewhere in Tinsukia, it's totally dark. So if this can be achieved, like if that it is a peak demand for the northeastern sector, but we are having solar energy in this part. If this can be transferred, further if we expand this, say if it is dark in say Far East, it's day in the Middle East. If we can have a grid, it's just a dream. Right now it's not possible because number of political reasons, whatever. But it's my dream. Our sun is the ultimate solution of all energy in this earth. The sun. Sun always shines somewhere or the other in the earth. If we can have a international grid, it's a dream, which I always think. If we can have an international grid, which is maybe possible, maybe 50 years later, 100 years later, all over the circumference of the earth, then it's the ultimate solution of all the energy solution of this world.
Mr. Gupta, if we could just wrap up there, because if we want to go around with the segments, and I want to pick up the transport
these
segment.
These are the few points
forward.
which I wanted, and Indian Railways, of course, we wanted work with the SMRs, we want RERTC also, and we want lot of power requirements. Yes, we wanted wind energy also. So with these words, I end my, because time is less. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
So just picking up on that thread and going on to clean transport, and we'll just come back to this table and then move forward. E-buses has become a big segment, and we were seeing it in the previous one of the slides that e-buses is a big segment. How are you looking at the supply chain for e-buses to play up for you in Bhutan? And then we can actually take that question around the room.
Thank you. For the transport sector, it accounts for like 60% of the greenhouse gas emission in Bhutan for the energy sector. It's a 60% contributor to greenhouse gas emission. So from that perspective, given that Bhutan is a producer of clean energy, there is net benefit for Bhutan to transition into sustainable transport system. And we have adopted a roadmap for this transition. And our initial focus is currently on electric buses, especially from the perspective of the Thimphu city. By 2020, in the next 10 years, by 2035, we are hoping to actually transition by replacing up to 50% of our conventional buses with electric buses. And by 2045, we hope to actually make a complete transition into 100% electric bus in Bhutan. But however, we have many challenges at this point of time because upfront cost for electric buses are very high. For instance, we have just one electric bus as of today. It costs in the region of 14 million just for one electric bus. And also, if you look at which is actually approximately 180,000 US dollar. And if you also compare this with the global cost of electric buses, it's very high. So it's going to be very challenging in terms of sustainability. And also when you talk about this value chain in the renewable based transport sector, we also have challenges in terms of needs for skilled manpower, technicians, for instance, maintaining. So the market has opportunity to create this, similarly the workshops, and also like when you talk about infrastructure specifically, from the infrastructure point of view, our early learning suggests that technology neutrality, for instance, is very important and critical, because we also do not want to be stuck with vendor lock-ins, any specific kind of technology. And I also see when you talk about the energy value chain across the region, the need for similar kind of standards and technologies to be adopted. So the seamless movement of electric vehicles. What we hope to contribute from this is that we hope that around by 2050 we should be able to contribute reduction of greenhouse gas by 5.68 million ton. And also like our dependency on fossil fuel is expected to go down. But however, again, for us, sustainability is a challenge. Currently, our replacement of conventional buses are entirely supported through grant and aid. And this I see as one of the biggest challenge because it's not just the initial investment, but how we maintain the momentum.
Right. So sorry, please continue and then I'll pick up
in
that
terms
thread.
of incentives to actually for the uptake of this technology, we have also provided tax exemptions for import of these vehicles. So I'll stop here for now.
I'll pick up 5 themes which you talked about. First is the cost reduction, and we need to explore whether getting a common regional market leads to that. The second is skills. The third is technicality, which is very important. Fourth is standards, and the fifth is incentives. I'll go over to Vishal Kapoor over here because ESL has been working on some of these things, but I do want you to contextualize this for the audience from the various countries over here and see that how we can collaborate with each other to really make this possibilities which Bhutan said real.
Okay, this is in respect to electric buses. So we all probably know in this room that India has been able to scale up the electric buses to a significant extent. Now, what is important probably are just 2-3 things. We talked about vendor lock-ins and all. See, electric buses and the kind of technology, battery operating systems, I think we have to one day settle with the idea that there will be vendor lock-ins. There will be, it'll be very difficult we can be technology agnostic. So I come from the railways, and same thing we have seen this pan over last 2-3 decades when we moved locomotives from, we used to repair our own locomotives, but then once you move towards electronics, it becomes a black box. You cannot do anything about it. You have to depend on the vendor. Now, how to neutralize that problem of vendor lock-in, that there lies the skill. And that's why we have to, I think, probably move towards long-term contracts. Long-term contracts with the service providers, we have to kind of let go of our absolute ownership. I mean, we do own uh, uh, as undertakings, as government institutions. We have to kind of let go of certain things that yes, this is something that will have to be worked upon by the private sector. That could be one way. And then it could be a long-term thing. You have to go in for, let's say, 10 years or 12 years of contract. Forget about, let's say, ownership, uh, probably move more towards a bus as a service. I mean, bus after all is a means of transportation. We have to move towards that. And you talk about everything in the recent past, whether you talk about smart meters, whether you talk about electric buses, it's all been made possible through these kind of long-term arrangements. One very important point, I think, is that somehow India has a so-called benefit of a large population, large market, 1.4 billion people. We produce and we consume also. So that benefit India has, it's a strength and a recognized weakness also. But if we somehow need to kind of, if we're not exacting the specifications, but I think we need to more and more converge towards a single specification, because what we have seen even in India across various states, every state has a different requirement. Somebody wants 42 seats, somebody wants 38 seats, somebody wants this, somebody wants that. So we have to somehow graduate towards some kind of a convergence towards one homologation standard, acceptability, duly taking into account if there are some specific things. Yes, what it does is it reduces the transaction costs to a great extent. You go and buy a bus, let's you buy 50 buses. The transaction cost becomes high because the bus may have to be tailor made for your particular standard, or will have to be done up completely afresh. So the more we try to converge, and the success of the e-bus program in India is only contingent upon some kind of a standardization. And you talk about bus, I mean, I again go back to smart metering. Smart metering on a scale where 1,50,000 crore rupees of investment is coming in. Electric buses is even higher. It's all because there has been one kind of a standardized specification that is being followed. Even purchase specification standardization. Now we can talk about several levels of standardization. Purchase level standardization, or standards level of standardization, or specification level. It is only when you do this that we will be able to get over get over the challenges of vendor lock-in, or and there is no problem being technology agnostic. If there are 10 or 15 players, let them come with various technologies. But as long as they are invested in, unless until they have a skin in their game for a long period of time, going ahead with an outright purchaser, you said that one bus will definitely be very expensive, because the operations and maintenance, and doing it on your own, probably very difficult. But one bus, if you feel that that pilot is good enough for you to understand that yes, this is the way forward, the next thing should not be 2 buses, should not be 10 buses, it should be 100 buses. A large scale pilot, a large enough scale pilot, let's say Thimphu, let's say a particular city. If you're okay, then go ahead and allow the skin in the game by the investor. And there are several ways of doing it. You can get it through the bus manufacturer. You can look at your own companies that could front end the bus project, because like in India, we are now migrating. We are saying now that no, bus manufacturers are not the ones that can do bus as a transportation project. We are now moved that no, a big project company which has an adequate money in his pocket, he is allowed to do this work. So these are some, yeah.
Coming back to is, do you see what would be the next step if we have to look at it from a regional perspective?
So basically, I just said homologation standards. India does right now is actually in the process of doing bids of 5,000, 7,000 buses at one point of time. Adding a couple of hundred buses will not be a challenge in that. That's what I'm
So
saying.
that's-
And then standardization. The only thing is that the acceptability of those standards may have to be seen in that particular context.
And from your perspective, again, because I wanted to also get your inputs on the question of, say, appliances, equipment, energy
Yeah.
efficiency.
Yes, yes.
And it's not just one country to the other, it's also about getting the region to get activated. How do
Absolutely.
you see that happening?
Absolutely. So again, I was just talking about electric buses. Anisha's presentation mentioned a lot of, you can see, investments. Energy efficiency specific, only two things, buildings and cooling. But then, is that enough? There is a full market available, retail. The retail segment, the domestic segment, nobody is touching today.
You did have residential there, that was
It
a
did
big
have.
jump, yeah.
Yeah. So residential, but that was building side. But appliances, a person who's becoming upwardly mobile, who's able to afford an air conditioner or a induction cook stove or a fan, how do we get that into it? So ultimately, we also talk about the market. We are talking about electricity markets. Can we integrate the appliance market? Is there a possibility of that? Can those particular standards that are in use again in India or the stars and labeling program, can there be a convergence amongst the standards? Can the acceptability be there? And in the initial lot, you need to push appliances that are reliable, because as picking up from Bhutan, the reliability, whether the product is actually going to work, is it going to deliver as what it promised or not. The initial lot has to probably go completely checked, quality controlled, and in a manner. And if you are able to proliferate it in a big way, get the people used to it, now automatically this whole transition will happen. Standards and labeling is a top-down approach, but probably there is also a way by which a bottoms-up approach can also be found. Proliferate equipment. India transitioned from incandescent lamps to LED lamps in a span of 3 years. Industry did it, people also did it. Nobody talks about incandescent lamps today. So that is what it is.
Thank you, and that's very useful. And we are going to, sorry, you want to have a question, please?
One fundamental question, which I think all countries in the region, in South Asia, they will have at the back of their mind is what is in it for us? What gains are we making out of this transition? So what is the benefit for us? What is the efficiency in the economy we are bringing about through this transition? Or that's why I try to raise this concern about vendor lock-in and long-term commitment to a technology which may not be working for us. So it's very important and critical when you talk about like countries like Bhutan or Nepal or any other in the region, that this issue is also addressed and understood right from the beginning. What is the net benefit in transitioning to a clean energy transport system, or for that matter, anything to do with the uses of sustainable energy?
Of course, like clean energy benefits, I think we already have at 2 p.m. we have a session on electric buses. We can probably look at that. Efficiency per se, electric transmission, electric buses, they are in any case around 20-25% more efficient than an equivalent diesel bus. The cost benefits are there, the environmental benefits are there, and the best part about Bhutan per se and also Nepal is your hydroelectric power is already clean. So it becomes questionable somewhere where there is a coal-fired grid which is feeding into electric buses. But once you are doing this, you have a clear-cut hydroelectric power which is clean power. I think there is a clear-cut case, and we can discuss this probably in the...
I think, sir, just to address your points, sir, not just for transportation, for whether the entire clean energy transition, right? Why should South Asian countries, the smaller ones, should go for it? If that's the question, I mean, particularly in Bhutan context, as you said, you're already clean. So running an electric bus actually is more, apt for Bhutan because it is really a clean transportation. It might be a question in some other countries like India also, where you do not have 100% clean power, but gradually shifting towards that. So I think the base is already there. The foundation is already there. So I mean, this whole thing about whether the smaller countries should invest in clean energy transition, whether the return on investments to them are, good enough to actually those investments. That's why we are bringing this topic again and again for regional cooperation. Can the economies of scale in bigger countries actually give an advantage to the smaller countries in the region so that the investments are much lesser and the return on investment is much better? So
I see two things, and Apurva, we'll go to Nepal from here, but I think two things also being very important. The first thing is that if you have business model standardization like Vishal spoke about, then the economies, the cost which you're talking about potentially can come down, and if it's a standard thing. The second thing is that in some cases, I know that Bhutan is projecting a pretty significant increase in your energy requirement, and a lot of it is going to come out from manufacturing, clean manufacturing things. So if there is a common standard, then you have access to a common market in the region, then that actually provides an impetus to even manufacturing industries, clean manufacturing industries. So that's something which we want to definitely look at much more, because there is a big focus of this on saying that how can we extend beyond energy trade into looking at products, solutions, and making all of that much more efficient in terms of cost. Now, going to Nepal, I think there was a very interesting thing which I heard 2 weeks ago. 70% of...
I just want to add something.
Yeah.
As talk about the economic of scale and about the standard. I'm Ranju Pandey. I am from Nepal. I just want to say that told about the economic scale and the standard. If we all the South Asian region, Bhutan, Nepal, and India, if we have the same kind of standard, looking our geographical region, if we can produce in the mass, mass production, then the cost will be definitely reduced, and then we can just implement this electrical vehicle for the transportation, for the local transportation. So if the USA and SACEF can come together, bring together all the country and help to make the standard, then it would be very...
I think that's exactly the point. Very well made point. Thank you for that, because that is the net gain which will come out of this. Now, especially in Nepal, you mentioned about us. I heard from MD NEA 2 weeks ago that 70% of new vehicle sales are EVs. Okay, so there is already something which is a large market in play, but there could be a lot more efficiency out of it, and there could be a lot more value addition, because today you're just buying those EVs from wherever, and it could also lead to inefficiency. I want to go over to Secretary Suresh Acharya, sir, and get your comments on how you're seeing this beyond just deploying electric vehicles into how can there be more value addition, sir, please.
Thank you, moderator. As we learn the perspective of Bhutan also, Bhutan and Nepal being both mountainous country, we are encouraging more and more e-vehicle to come. But Energy Ministry is separate ministry which is responsible for generating, transmitting, and the trade-off of the energy. We have the separate ministry for this transportation sector. And the Ministry of Transport and Physical Infrastructure is there. So separate minister, separate ministry. So they have the master plan for the year 2030. So electrical vehicle, importing electric vehicle and the operation of electric vehicle belongs to their purview, right? So what we do, we at the ministry and the Nepal Electricity Corporation, we are encouraging people, even private sector, to engage in the construction of the the vehicle charging station. We are facilitating them, the private sector, to come and start the operation of the electrical vehicle charging station there. So Nepal Electricity Authority is facilitating them, and where there is no electricity connection, they are doing connection and they making the charging infrastructure there. So people and the business people, they are attracted to bring more and more EVs in our country. But the import charge and the custom duties are very higher. Even government has not reduced the import of this kind of EV vehicles in our country. So this fiscal year, we imported more and more EVs, as you mentioned before. But due to natural this kind of landslide and flooding, many, our national highways are washed out. So the electrical charging stations are also damaged. So we are reviving those charging stations. That's why the moment of this kind of electrical vehicle has been injured. So we are resuming that. So more about this electrical vehicle, I will ask my colleague, Mr. Mandal, to highlight on this.
Thank you, sir. In this regard, actually, very rightly discussed earlier, that in the last fiscal year, out of total import of four-wheeler vehicles in our country, 70% is from EVs, and it's quite encouraging from our customers, from our users' perspectives. And there are so many, guys coming to our ministry. Sometimes many people come and also ask for suggestions. So we try to suggest them. EVs future is very bright, and we need to purchase EVs. And we have also reduced the customs on EVs in comparison to our gasoline vehicles. And regarding renewables, so I'd like to simply touch upon, out of our 3,280 megawatt installed capacity, so in last fiscal year we have connected 700 megawatt, and all from solar and hydros. So mostly from hydros. And in our opening remarks, our respected secretary already pointed out that and that we have already curtailed, we have already kept out of operation of our diesel power plant, thermal power plants. Two major thermal power plants that were already kept out of operations. So we are totally reliant on renewable energy resources. And when we talk regionally, so like Bhutan, we have our electricity generating resources all coming from renewables these days. And our target is to generate or to add on 28,500 megawatt by 2035, and all coming from renewables. So, looking at the regional cooperations, and also some Indian companies, some Indian, I think, government-related companies as well have come to Nepal to invest in the development of hydropower, and in some 2 or 3 solar projects as well, there are some investments coming from India. So if we, coordinate and collaborate regionally, so we are pretty sure that our regional grid that we are trying to formulate will be, reliant on regional, renewable energy. But I think there may be, the major role of India, because India is in the center of all our South Asian countries. So I think the role of India should be prominent, how we should drive together and obtain the role. So thank you so much.
Apurva, you have a comment on that?
No, just to kind of shift a little bit, we have a lot of industry leaders here as well. So just to get an industry perspective on certain segments, let's be very targeted. appliances, equipments, electric vehicles. So those three segments, and we have appliances representation, we have the distribution transmission equipments representation, as well as electric buses. So maybe anyone
Yeah,
can
we
start.
should go into the actually the supply side of the
Exactly.
thing.
So far,
Yes.
I mean, we are obviously looking at problem statements and certain business models, but right now we also want to come back to the topic in,
Right. You want to go?
So I think this is a great initiative. I think there are a lot of opportunities and things which we are motivates the industry as well to look at the regional forum. Companies like us have been there in all these countries for many decades now, but we do see that the business have not gone up. The bigger reason has been because of the standards. The standards are very different. But yes, the standards takes time, and India pretty much has. If you look at one of the common things is all the countries are at 230 volts and 50 hertz. I think that's already there. So it makes no rocket science. You know, if you really want to leapfrog, just the country should jump on to the Indian standards, because there has been a lot of momentum in the last 10 years, and a lot of these standards have become more modern. And they are also getting updated very frequently. Every 3 or 4 years, you see that they are getting updated. So the regional inputs will also come in. India already has similar geographies like mountains and island nations. So so we have similar geography. So a lot of those specifications go into making appliances. The other part is also to leapfrog. I think I do see ESL and the Government of India really did a fantastic job from the lighting perspective in 3 to 4 years. How the standards were there, but then there was a impetus which came in, which really informed. In fact, like Bhutan mentioned about the rate differences, the price differences, because even if you have standards, the markets may not have enforcement is again a big challenge. So one of the best way is to let the consumer enjoy those products, because once they see those products, the higher specification products, and the best way is somehow like ESL did demand aggregation. You buy bulk and find out a method in the supply chain, it goes into consumer homes, and then it really falls, in 2 to 3, 4 years, it really starts happening. So I think there are great opportunities. I think the more we have such discussion, the industry would be more than forthcoming to participate in this process.
Thank you. That's very useful. Why don't we go to Carrier and hear your views on the appliances side of things?
No, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity. I think it's been a great conversation so far. If you look at appliances, right, if you look at a lot of energy used in buildings worldwide, and HVAC constitutes a big part of the energy that's used inside a building. And particularly in the South Asia region, it's really more comfort cooling. It's really more cooling. Some of the other places where you are actually developing products, there's a lot of heating involved. So I think we can certainly optimize things more for cooling. But frankly, if I look at the level of work that's kind of happening here, right, and the supply chain, there isn't a lot of development that's, for example, happening on large buildings. Take a look at data centers, for example. Huge opportunity going ahead. Big buildings, huge opportunity going ahead. A bulk of the market is on the residential side, but I think the commercial and the large commercial is very big. These equipment last for 15, 20 years. So it's not just first cost. How do you optimize life cycle costs? How do you make sure that a building is performing the way it is supposed to perform? You could easily improve 30-40% energy efficiency in a building if you actually run your products well. So I think there is a lot of, the life cycle management. All of these are going to be huge contributors. 99% of our emissions are really scope 3. That means they are not in our chain, but they're really the life cycle, once it kind of gets into the market, which I think has a tremendous impact overall on this whole topic. Labs, right? I think people talked about getting labs. There isn't a single large commercial lab available publicly, right? So I think that's where we can partner better, get common standards. So you don't have to test everything separately for different countries. It takes a lot of effort. And I think that's where we can certainly help.
Thank you.
Maybe we can come to Sunil ji from Secure Meters.
Yeah, I think one area where we can collaborate, I think, is about the distribution modernization activity and smart grids. I think the Smart Grid India is like an initiative of installing 50 million smart meters. I think is the world's largest rollout and world's largest private sector investment. And I think the worldwide people were never investing in the metering assets. Only the asset funders are investing. And India has taken a lead, and I think this practice can be followed by other countries also. There is no need of investing in the capital assets. The private sector is willing to invest. A lot of private sector is coming. And I think it will be important to modernize the grid because the managing renewable, whatever percentage of renewable is there, the newer technologies, whether it's analytics, whether it's a smart metering or other distribution automation equipment will be very, very important. And whatever the social challenges we are facing in the rolling out of smart meters, I think the neighboring country can also learn because the customer engagement, consumer engagement is the most important. And I think we can share our experience learning how to engage customer. And India is also 100% prepayment. No country in the world has rolled out 250 million smart prepayment mode meter. And I think we can share those learning experiences. Thank you.
That's fantastic. And now let's go to the other big market for smart metering, which is emerging, Sri Lanka. So your perspective, sir.
Actually, when the distribution sector is in this reformation in order to acquire green energy and going for the newly developed customer expectations, we are seeing a massive transformation. So this transformation we cannot bring in without making our grid smarter. So smart meters would be one axis, but there may be other equipment as well. The automated switches, network monitoring devices, as well as software solutions. Unless we are going to equip the grid in that level, we will never be able to satisfy the growing customer demand. So looking at that, what I feel is that there would be a huge market opening up. So massive market coming, whatever the grid that we have built is going to be entirely transformed through new products. So that market is getting up. So the region got to get ready for that. Because it is not that one country can manufacture everything. As well as we will not prosper unless that we are looking at the regional markets. The regional grid what we are talking about got to be self-sustainable. So our products got to be developed by ourselves, that particular regional market. So unless we create that synergy, probably our regional idea of transacting energy, that may not work. So we have to understand that very clearly, that we as a region got to be consistent.
So we'll just go behind you for getting the views from Genus about how you're looking at the market. You know, I know you have a big India market, but would a broader regional market, including say Sri Lanka or Nepal, Bhutan, which are opening up, attract you?
They definitely, yes, India is a huge market, very rightly said by you. But what I gathered from the talk today, which is a great initiative, the only thing I want to add here is nobody in the neighboring countries need to reinvent the wheel. India is a continent, we all understand, we have every kind of region as a country. So we cater to all kind of temperatures, all kind of weather. Same thing is with our neighboring countries. So a great document has been made by the government of India under the RDSS program. And this is the first time, very rightly said by Mr. Singhvi, that all the investors across the globe are more than happy to come and invest in the smart metering projects. No need to reinvent the wheel, just follow the RDSS program in the neighboring countries. I strongly believe that will bring economies of scale. India is already doing 250 million, which according to me in next 7 to 8 years will become almost 300 million meters, by far the largest program in the world. And once you extend it to the regional countries, these neighboring countries, it will further expand the numbers, brings economies of scale, and it's a win-win situation for all. That's what I can add here.
Thank you. And I think on that win-win point, going over to Vikram Gandotra, you know, it's not just meters, but it's also a large-scale equipment we are talking about, T&D equipment. How do we bring that as a common market?
You hit the hammer on the nail.
India today is looked at as a source for electrical equipment, not only for the Indian market, but not even only for the Asian market, not even markets adjoining Asia, but as far as even US. So we have got electrical manufacturers from India who are regularly exporting to Europe, regularly exporting to Australia, regularly exporting to the US. Today, the entire world is seeing the strength which is there in the Indian manufacturing sector in the electrical equipment, not only because we have the factories there, but we have the R&D, we have the innovation which is being done, and the problems that we are solving, the problems which come in the grid, the problems which come in the distribution network in India do not happen probably in the other parts of the world. And we have that experience. Our engineers have overcome all those problems, and they have, they are using that to build strong products which are being marketed around the world. So that is something which all of us together, whether it is in Sri Lanka or Bhutan, Maldives, Nepal, Bangladesh, we have got the best of the engineers, we have got the best of the minds in this part of the world, and we collaborate and we build the best product for ourselves and also for the rest of the world. So that is my point of view.
Right. Thanks, and I think that's a great potential. We are running out of time. I'm going to go to Maldives, to Mariam Shahana, for your thought, because you've heard the large countries coming in. Sorry, go ahead. You wanted to make a comment on this?
She's not here, that's right.
Okay, so she's not here. Okay. So any views from the Maldives participants? You're not Maldives, but we'll come back to you maybe in the end. Yeah, quickly.
Thank you. My name is Ali Azwa. I'm the Deputy Managing Director of State Electric Company of the Maldives. I just joined this conversation. I think this is very useful and interesting to be part of the regional cooperation to get support and engagement. As we talked yesterday in one of the panel, I raised on our initiative to deploy large-scale smart metering project. I think this is very relevant to what we have discussing. On that regard, I think one of the things that's related in terms of deploying such project is something related to standards, something that we just heard. We had a previous initiative as well. So one of the major issues that we came across besides communication was getting on board different or alternative brands of meters, for example, to the system. So we are kind of tied up with one supplier when there are no open systems or standards that facilitate along with these systems. So I think these standards is quite important with that regard, the kind of successful stories that we are hearing, particularly from India, that would be very useful in our case as well.
Right. Thank you. We are really out of time. If you have a very brief observation, we can take just at the end and then close this. I'm going to hand it over to Apurva to close.
Thank you for the presentation. My name is Abhijit Basu and I represent an organization called SmartX. We are working on hydrogen decarbonization of steel. So first I've got a comment for the countries which are smaller than India. India certainly has a lot of these examples, but when you're going to electrify, especially with renewables, your grids, you'll have specific challenges. And it's better to actually take the best practices from India and then customize to your local needs. And the reason I'm suggesting that the next economy is not only electric battery vehicles, but it's the hydrogen electric vehicles. And in order for your grid to be sustainable is very important to gain a kind of momentum with the hydrogen economy. And with that, I've got one quick question. Is anybody looking at hydrogen electric vehicles as a solution in India or otherwise here in this room?
So I think that could be a lunchtime conversation, and since we're running out of time and we need to start the next session on time, I'll just like to close this with a few summarization of points that have emerged. First of all, I think we heard across everyone from disparate standards and specifications to homogenization is one of the key things, whether it's in the transmission distribution sector, whether it's in the energy efficiency sector, whether it's in the electric mobility sector. I think this is a very clear message that is coming out for a regional market to develop in any of the sectors, whether it's electric mobility, efficiency, smart grids, whatever. The second thing is, from projects, we need to now also, discuss the products kind of a transition. So we are looking, so far as the regional cooperation was concerned, we were looking at large scale, hydropower projects, we were looking at renewables projects, but the time has also come that when we talk about clean energy value chain and particularly the supply chain, we need to concentrate also on the products which will, themselves would require a regional approach for, better clean energy transition in the region. The third thing I thought also emerged out, I think very subtly, but also very pertinent, is the skill building. So how do you do it? Even if you're looking at other countries, how do we have a common kind of a skill building program which can support this kind of a transition to happen? Also from a consumer perspective, how do we bring in awareness to create this kind of demand which would lead to a transition, a transformation in the markets itself for any of the products that we talked about? Clearly, as I said, it's quality and cost competitiveness, both things very, very important for the South Asian region, and both can come if there is a regional cooperation approach that's taken forward. So with that, as USAID India, I would like to thank each one of you. All of you are leaders in your own capacities, but to take this forward, this agenda, this new narrative that we are trying to see, we would come up with a white paper on specific things that we just talked about to take this discussion to the next level. We will also formulate a very closed-door, smaller group, which can, of course, then take this agenda forward to really act upon. So with that, thank you everyone, and please join us for lunch.